Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be responding to this fool, Kyle Kulinski of Secular Talk. I don't know if I've responded to one of his videos yet on my show, but actually I did once during a live stream. But today we're going to be responding to there are no fiscal conservatives in a crisis. And let's get this shit going.
The former Federal Reserve chairman and the current one both agree on a key
Fuck the Fed
issue, and this directly relates to the crisis that's going on right now, not just the pandemic, but the economic fallout. And you're going to see here Jerome
this video's from April 1st, by the way. I found this video like a few weeks ago, and I thought it would be good to respond to. There might be some outdated information in it because this pandemic updates fucking daily. But I think that the general points here are relevant, as this is called, there are no fiscal conservatives in a crisis. He's going to talk about government spending and crises.
Powell is the first one, current Federal Reserve chairman, and then you'll see Ben Bernanke, who was in charge during the 2008 crash.
Well, the Federal Reserve doesn't exactly print money, but as one writer put it, you do have the ability to conjure money out of thin air.
What the fuck? How loose are we going to be with concepts here? How loose are we going to be with concepts? Oh, they don't print money, but they can conjure money out of thin air. What the fuck does printing money mean? Good lord, 30 seconds in and I'm already like, what the fuck is this bullshit? Good lord, how loose are we going to play with concepts here? We're just going to say, oh, let's draw this distinction here between printing money and conjuring money out of thin air. What is printing money? Printing money is defined by conjuring money out of thin air, out of absolutely nothing, out of not actual value. And that's what the Federal Reserve does. She agrees with it. She said it. She just didn't call it printing money so that people didn't get afraid who were watching.
My question to you is simple. Is there any limit to the amount of money the Fed is willing to put into this economy to keep it afloat? Is it a blank check?
Savannah, we, in certain circumstances like the present, we do have the ability to essentially use our emergency lending authorities. And the only limit on that will be how much backstop we get from the Treasury Department. We're required to get full security for our loans so that we don't lose money. And so the Treasury puts up money as we estimate what the losses might be. But essentially, the answer to your question, though, is no. We can continue to make loans, and really the point of all that is to support the flow of credit in the economy to households and businesses.
Is that tax money that the Fed is spending?
It's not tax money.
Okay, why did he have to make such a long-winded, unclear, incoherent answer? I don't even remember what the question was by the time he said no. My unity economy is exploding. It was, is there any limit to what they can print? You could have said, no, there's no limit to what we can print. There's no limit to the amount of money we can conjure out of thin air. We're the Federal Reserve. We control this economy. We direct this economy. And we'll run it into the fucking ground if we have to save some people from the flu.
Credit in the economy to households and businesses.
Is that tax money that the Fed is spending?
It's not tax money. The banks have...
Here we have a distinction between tax money and printed money. What's the difference? Well, one is direct theft, or not theft, because according to like all the autistic fucking sorry, I shouldn't say that. According to all the arguments by people like Sam Cedar, theft must be something that is illegal. So forcefully taking of someone's money, taxation is the direct forcefully taking of someone's money. While printing money is the indirect taking of someone's money. How does this work? Inflation. And we'll get more into this later because Kyle Kulinski says something absolutely stupid later related to this point.
Accounts with the Fed, much the same way that you have an account in a commercial bank. So to lend to a bank, we simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account that they have with the Fed. So it's much more akin, although not exactly the same, but it's much more akin to printing money than it is to borrowing.
Isn't that?
We'll just make the numbers go up in people's accounts. It's not printing money because we're just making the numbers go up. We're not actually producing more money. We're just increasing the numbers of the dollar values. We're just creating more money out of thin air. Not printing money though. No, not printing money. I don't want to scare people. People are going to get scared if we talk about printing money because that'll remind them of all the times where people have printed money in the past, and it completely destroys an economy.
Isn't that something? Isn't that something? So basically,
Yeah, that is something. That's fucking economic ignorance from the people who are supposed to understand how the economy works.
you have the Federal Reserve chairman. They all agree. We control our currency.
All the experts agree. All the experts agree.
We're a sovereign country. We have our own currency. So if we need to, we just mark up the account.
Oh my God. This is disgusting.
Money based on nothing. Printing money. And move a decimal point on the computer, and we're done. And there's also wide agreement.
Oh my God. He's just like, oh, nonchalant. Move a decimal place on the computer, and there you go. That's it. Got more money. And now what does this mean? What does it mean to move this decimal place on the computer? It means you are creating more money out of thin air, obviously, as we all agree on this. Now what else does that mean? It means that the proportion of wealth in the economy shifts. It shifts from the people who don't get these decimal places moved to the people who do get these decimal places moved, which means it shifts from the people in the Federal Reserve and their cronies, or it shifts to those people from everyone else, from all the other people in the economy. It's the indirect appropriation of wealth from the economy. This makes it so that the prices of goods rise, because when you inject more money to the economy, when you inject more dollars into the economy, the amount that it basically what happens is you shift the demand curve to the right, because what's going to happen when you have more money? Well, if these goods are the same price, you're going to buy a lot more of those goods. So to counteract that fact, the prices on those goods go up. Well, now you're seeing what happens. The prices on these goods are going to go up, and the rest of the people in the economy, the people and everyone else, their bank accounts, their wealth stays exactly the same. So what happens here? People can buy less goods. There's going to be less things that people can buy. And this destroys economies, because people are going to buy less things. And now what else happens? Now that the government has this money and not the people, well, the government, when the government takes wealth from the people, it inherently makes it so that you're buying things that are less demanded by the populace. Why? Well, when I have my money, I have certain things that I want to buy. I have certain values that I want to buy. This applies to everybody else in the economy. Now, when the government takes this money, those are things that I cannot spend that money on. I can't spend my money on those things that I demand. And the government then goes to spend it on something else, something that I want less with that money. Inherently. If it was something that I wanted the most, just let me keep my money and I'll buy the thing that I want the most. However, when they take this money, they're spending it on things that are less demanded. They're spending it on things that people want less. So you're essentially destroying wealth. You're destroying wealth by taking money from things that people do want, from things that are demanded, and redirecting it towards things that aren't wanted. This is true with all government spending. This is true with all government appropriation of wealth. And it's the same thing with inflation, because it's not as direct, it's not as obvious, but it is still appropriation of wealth. They're still taking wealth from the populace by making it so that prices of goods go up and the wealth of the populace just stays the exact same without any increases to counteract that. And that is very directly stealing from the populace. Now, let's get into more, because there's still more that we have to say. There's still 6 minutes left on this video. I don't know if I'll watch the whole thing, because most of the time when I watch Kyle Kulinski videos, he has all his hot takes in the beginning, and then he just kind of repeats himself throughout.
Admit that when you're in a crisis, you have to spend your way out of it. Now,
how well did that work historically? Let's look at historical crises. Let's look at the Great Depression, for example. The Great Depression, we spent a bunch of money. What happened? The crisis lasted for a decade. The crisis didn't end until after World War II, when we started freeing up the economy and we ended up getting out of the crisis. Spending does not work. Spending does not get us out of the crisis. It prolongs the crisis. Or what it does is it basically props back up the things that failed, props back up this misallocation of resources. Basically what happens is crises are caused by when we misallocate resources in the economy. And when we misallocate those resources, we create these sort of bubbles in the economy. Now what happens when the government tries to spend its way out of it, it doubles down on that misallocation. injects money into those failing sectors to prop them back up, to make it so that the resources don't actually reallocate to people's demands. It makes it so that we prop back up this business and we double down on our former misallocation. So yeah, that's what happens in a crisis. Now this specific Corona crisis, it's not an economic crisis, so to speak, but basically what it is there's people who are vulnerable to this crisis or vulnerable to this disease. People are vulnerable to getting sick with the coronavirus. And certain people are more vulnerable than other people, namely the people who have pre-existing conditions or are older. Well, what we're doing because of this, we're shutting down everybody's life. We're telling everybody, no, you can't go out and take this risk. You're not allowed to go out and decide how you want to judge this situation by yourself and assess this risk as you want to. We're going to shut down everything. We're shutting down the entire economy. Well, what is the economy? Economy is us. The economy is all of us. The economy is all the people in the economy, basically. The economy is just production and trade. It is what people produce and how we trade it amongst ourselves. When we shut that down, we give up our means to achieving more and more wealth, and we give up what makes society great, the fact that we can exchange material goods with each other, along with the fact that we can exchange knowledge and spiritual values, but that's not that's separate from the economy for the most part. The fact is, when we're with an economy, we exchange material goods. We engage in these win-win transactions. When we shut that down, our lives clearly suffer. Think about how you're living right now. You can't go to most restaurants. Most restaurants are drive-through. You can't go to the store most of the time. You can't buy things on Amazon. It takes weeks for them to deliver. All your life is being shut down right now because some old people are at high risk of dying to a disease. Why not just shut down their lives? Why do you have to shut down all of our lives as well? And why do we have to spend our way out of this crisis and just make it worse? I mean, that's really all we're doing. We're making it so that people can not buy goods as efficiently. We're making it so that we print this money, give it to the Federal Reserve and their cronies, and people can't buy goods as effectively.
This is the logic is what FDR did during the Great Depression. Hey,
he named it specifically. We already went into this.
We need a new deal. We're in the midst of the Great Depression. Everybody's out of work. Unemployment is skyrocketing.
Prolong the crisis,
I'm going to put the
baby.
country back to work. I'm going to put them back to work doing infrastructure projects, having programs that get money to people. So, yeah, it actually is widely agreed upon that.
At what cost, though? At what cost are you getting this money to people? At the cost of stealing it from other people? At the cost of taking it from the people who are going to actually get us out of these sort of crises by investing more money, by investing in their businesses, building their businesses up, creating more jobs? So you're taking the money from the people that are actually going to improve the situation, that are going to produce more, boost the economy, and giving it to the people who are just going to spend, who are going to just buy from the people that are going to recreate this economy. Well, what is there to buy at this point? When the economy collapses, when these businesses are collapsing, you're just going to give money to people that are going to buy stuff from these businesses? Well, the businesses are collapsing. What businesses are they going to buy from? You need to invest more money. We need to invest, or who are you going to take from as well? All the businesses are collapsing. We need to let people hold on to their money, reinvest, and figure out this crisis on their own. That's how economic crises should work.
When the rubber hits the road and there's a real crisis, this is what we have to do. So, in other words, you're not buying into the logic of the Austrian economists who, want us back on the gold standard, for example, and are super concerned about the deficits and the national debt.
The Austrian economists are right. That's the thing. That's the thing he's missing here. The Austrian economists are right on this. Everything that they've predicted, every economic event that's happened can be explained through the lens of Austrian economics just as easily. I mean, look at the Great Depression. As we spent our way out of it more and more, we just got deeper into the crisis because people were unable to rebuild these businesses. I mean, there's so much like essential economics here. There's so much. You don't understand basic economics. And I know people on the left are like, "Oh yeah, you guys are so obsessed with the basic economics, but you guys don't understand actual like more advanced economics." Well, guess what? Basic economics are the intuitions on which we base the economic field. You can't contradict basic intuitions with more advanced knowledge. That's a basic fact of concept formation. Think about when you form the concept of man when you're a child, a human being. You initially just form it as a concept of a being that walks around, that moves. Well, then you realize that there's other types of beings that move. So then you have to reconsider it. Well, you see that, okay, there's cats that move. There's dogs that move. Well, okay, then humans are the beings that walk around on two legs. Well, then you see that there's other beings that walk around on two legs. And then you eventually come to this idea that human beings are the animal with the capacity to reason. And yeah, that's eventually what you end up coming to. But that fact does not contradict any of the earlier things that you've defined humans as. You didn't identify the essential, but you identified facts about human beings. And those facts are still contained within the concept. For example, like the fact that a human being moves around. Human beings obviously move around. They still move around even as you gain more knowledge. They still walk on two legs even as you gain more knowledge. Of course, you can crawl, but whatever. That's not the important fact here. Same thing with economics. This is the same thing with any sort of field. You cannot discover new knowledge in economics that contradicts the basic axioms upon which it rests. You cannot discover new knowledge that disproves the law of supply and demand. But that's what these people claim to do. They disconnect these new concepts from their previous concepts, and they create absurd economic systems like Keynesian economics and modern monetary theory, and all these absurd economic beliefs. While the Austrians, on the other hand, they have their flaws, of course. I'm not a huge fan of like Murray Rothbard or Mises. They don't obsess themselves with the proper morality here. They're not based in the proper morality. But what they do with the science of economics is right. They start with the facts. They start with these supply and demand facts, and they draw out the logical implications of those facts, always adhering to reality, always holding true to the facts on the ground. But what the Keynesians do is they make these absurd abstractions of society and the GDP, or like this general GDP, the aggregate demand curve. It's so stupid, but let's keep going.
And they say, hey, you got to take a hands-off approach, and you can't just artificially prop up the money supply and just print money. That's what the Austrian economists would say. Then you have the Keynesians, who are more in agreement with this philosophy. But in my opinion, it looks like all these guys are modern monetary theorists, and Stephanie Kelton is somewhere watching this smiling right now, because they all agree with her. What she says is, yeah, we have our own currency.
No, rational economists do not agree with this. They realize that we're replacing one crisis with another one. We can't replace the coronavirus crisis with an economic collapse. An economic collapse is going to kill people too. Don't miss that fact. Don't forget about that fact. An economic crisis will kill far more than any coronavirus could. It's not going to be as obvious, though. It's not going to be as in the news as the coronavirus, because people getting laid off from their jobs and dying of starvation, or people becoming homeless, that shit does not make the news. What makes the news is the fact that, thousands died today because of a pandemic disease. That's what makes the news. But let's keep going.
Currency. We control our own currency. We have to control inflation, but we could just mark up the account and spend if we want. Now,
Why should we control the economy? Why can't we just let individuals judge what they want for their own lives? Let individuals judge what is best for them in this crisis and the best way to get out of it. Now, obviously, there's a sense in which we might need to quarantine certain people who are more at risk for this disease and find ways to get them food or do things like that. That I would properly say might be an actual role of government, although I still have a lot of thinking to do on that issue, and I wouldn't necessarily say that is absolutely the best plan. But I do think we should, instead of, if the choice is between isolating just the at-risk people and isolating everybody and shutting down the economy, certainly take isolating just the people who are at risk for this disease. Absolutely. Those are the people who are at risk. We need to find ways to accommodate the fact that they are at risk. They're going to be, there's a sense in which a disease is force. There's force being acted upon them by the fact that they have to be around other people and get this disease. There's a sense in which that's true. So there's a sense in which we, with the government, we can quarantine those specific people, the people that are at risk. Now, I would prefer if they let it be in their individual judgment. I think that would honestly be better. Yeah, actually thinking about that, I think it would just be better just to let people individually judge what they need to do. You can have the government encourage social distancing. I mean, isn't this what they did in South Korea? In South Korea, they just encouraged social distancing. They didn't shut down the economy. They just they just let people voluntarily decide what to do and how to respond to this crisis. I mean, most of the at-risk people are not going to go out a bunch and go get infected and go infect themselves. The people who are going to go out are going to be the people who are stupid, and they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to risk all of this. I'm going to risk my life for this coronavirus. And that's stupid. I mean, let people weigh the pros and cons of this. If there's people who are working paycheck to paycheck, they should still go out, do their job, assess the risk, do what they need to do in their own lives. But yeah, whatever. Let's keep going.
I want you to take note of what is unanimous agreement on this front. You're seeing it right now under Democratic administrations, under Republican administrations. The head of
the fact that there's unanimous agreement makes me extremely pessimistic for the future of this country.
Central bank is like, yeah, this is what we do. Okay, so if we agree that in the time of crisis, you can just fix it, you spend your way out of it, why do we not consider the 45,000 people who die every year because they don't have basic health care?
Here's the thing. If you agree with this fact, let's let him finish.
Why is that not a crisis? And by the way,
if you agree with the fact that this is a crisis and we need to spend our way out of this crisis, you cannot logically respond to this argument. If you believe that we need to use force on the populace to spend our way out of crises, you have no response to this argument. And that's a major problem. This is why we need a more individualistic philosophy. A philosophy of each person needs to take responsibility for their own life and act selfishly for their own life. But we don't have that philosophy. Well, we do, but it's not widely accepted in this country. That philosophy is objectivism, Ayn Rand's philosophy. Once we accept that philosophy, we will be able to respond to these type of arguments. Because the thing is, I don't think that we can spend our way out of a crisis. We can't force our way out of a crisis. Each individual needs to use their own judgment to figure out how to respond to their crisis in their own life. Everyone has a responsibility for their own life. I don't believe in collective action. Collective action leads to unintended consequences that ultimately sacrifice individuals for the collective. I mean, that is very, very basic. Very obvious stuff. Not super obvious, but read some Ayn Rand. Look up more videos of Ayn Rand if you want to understand these points better. His point here is that because we can spend in a crisis, why can't we consider other things crises, like the medical bankruptcies? And people who think that we can spend our way out of crises, they don't have a way to respond to this. This is a good argument if you accept the altruistic morality, if you accept a collectivistic morals, ethical system. It's not a valid argument if you accept an egoistic moral system. Why do I have a responsibility to provide for these people in crisis? Why? He's taking that for granted in this argument. He's taking it for granted that we need to sacrifice individuals to solve a collective crisis. No, we don't need to do that. We have a responsibility to our own lives, to achieve our own happiness, to pursue our own lives. Not to sacrifice for the collective.
By the way, it's 45,000 to 68,000. Is that not a crisis? Is the tens of millions of people without health insurance, is that not a crisis? Is the 500,000 homeless people in this country, is that not a crisis? Is the 78%...
Also, a lot of these problems would be solved just by freeing up the economy, letting the healthcare industry just completely free itself, do all the innovations that it can do, let it just free it from the FDA. For one, I mean, that would be such a massive thing. It would take away all the red tape that's required in creating a new prescription drug, and ultimately the prices of these things would go down. And because you're creating more innovations, because there's more competition, because less regulation, more competition. I mean, this is a general fact about economics as well. I mean, we could solve a lot of these problems just by freeing up the economy. So you can point to these problems. I can point to them as well. I can say, oh yeah, look, all these people with this healthcare problem, all these homeless people, let's free up the economy. Let the people decide how to innovate. Let people decide what they need to invest, and let the jobs spring up. Let the prescription medicines. Let all the new innovations in medicine just come to the economy, come to the market. Yeah, we can solve this. We can solve this crisis. We can solve all these crises, but not through collectivism, through individualism, through freedom.
Of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, is that not a crisis? Is half of workers making $30,000 a year or less? Is that not a crisis? Are these things? Is climate change not a crisis? That's not a crisis.
It would be more of a crisis if we just completely abandoned fossil fuels, the sources of energy that have built the civilization, basically. I mean, cheap, reliable, plentiful energy is not easy to find. We can't just replace that overnight. We can't just replace it with these inefficient, unreliable energy sources like solar, wind. These are garbage. They don't work. They're not reliable. What if it's a cloudy day? I mean, this is such a basic argument, but like, if it's a cloudy day, it's not our solar energy is not going to work as well. And I mean, it's all completely arbitrary. It's all completely whimsical. Like, it's just based off whatever the environment's doing at the time. And then sometimes, like in Germany, aren't they like selling? Yeah, there's something with like, they're like selling the solar, or like they're paying you to use solar energy. Basically, that's absurd. That's absurd. It's just such an inefficient system. These things, like these renewable energy systems, are so bad. Now, if we freed up the economy, guess what we would have to replace fossil fuels? A much more clean energy source, nuclear, a much more efficient energy source. And the only issue right now is that it's so overregulated, so overburdened by the fact that people are afraid of the human mind. They're afraid of us creating these nuclear power plants because they're afraid, they're going to blow up. There's going to be nuclear fallout, which is such a misunderstanding of how these nuclear power plants actually work. They're not bombs. If these things malfunction, it's not going to create a nuclear explosion. These things are not designed to blow things up. Bombs are literally designed to blow things up. Nuclear power plants are not designed to do so. There's safety measures built in. Plus, there's just the fact that these are not designed to explode and create massive death. So when they do fall, when there is problems with that, when there's nuclear fallout, when there's, all right, is that the right word? I don't know. When there's like a meltdown of the power plant, what's going to happen is it's not going to be a nuclear explosion. There's going to be problems, of course, but it's not going to be as bad as people expect. It's not like we're going to get fucking nuked by the fact that a nuclear power plant melts down. But the general point here is let's let the economy become free. Let's free up our economy and let the individual producers produce and innovate. And if we can do that, we can solve climate change easily. Climate change is not this massive fucking problem. I mean, there's things we can do with insurance too at the borders where in the major urban centers. If the sea levels are just going to completely drown New York City. Which, I mean, there's so many things we can do economically without banning fossil fuels and trying to do all this to shut down the economy to solve climate change. I mean, there's so many other things we can do.
Crisis? So I think you get my point. My point is the only time it's like widely agreed upon that we're in a crisis is when the market falls. When we enter a bear market. When we have a sharp drop in the market. Oh my God, the Dow Jones and the NASDAQ. That's when the Fed is like, oh, we better do something. But when there are the everyday crises of regular working people and poor people,
we shouldn't do anything in either case. Let individuals solve these problems. I agree that these are crises. But they're not crises that I need to solve. They're not crises that you need to solve. They're crises that individual people need to solve, or individual communities as well.
They're just like, our concern is the market. Well, maybe that's the problem. And if you want to say, hey, look.
Also, there's a weird dichotomy that he's drawing here between the market and the people. Like, the market is the people. I mean, there's a sense in which, like, the Federal Reserve and all that stuff has separated the market from the people. It's made it so that there's these cronies that are, like, at the top here, and they're getting all the favors of the economy, while all the people, all the people at the bottom are, like, losing out on all that sort of stuff. I mean, there's a sense in which that's sort of right. But it's still, in general, that's a weird dichotomy. The market is the people. The market is the exchanges between individuals and the production by individuals.
Look, that's a little different. It's not tax money, it's the central bank. Fair enough, but shouldn't we also have that same logic and same approach when it comes to the government, when it comes to the House of Representatives and the Senate and the President, the legislative branch and the executive branch? Why wouldn't we have that same approach? And by the way, we do have it in certain circumstances. They didn't pay for that multi-trillion-dollar tax cut, the 2017 Republican tax cut, which was like the Bush tax cuts on steroids.
You don't really need to pay for a tax cut. What does that even mean? The tax cut is just giving people their money back. You're not paying for anything. That's such a weird way to look at it. Saying that you're paying by not taking. That's like saying that, oh, I didn't go steal from the gas station down the block. I didn't go steal $100 from them like I was planning on. That means I gave them $100. I mean, that's just the way that people use concepts is so unclear and so incoherent sometimes. I mean, take an epistemology course, Kyle.
Multi-trillion-dollar tax cut bill, 83% of the benefits went to the top 1% and the corporations. They didn't pay for it. They just said, oh, we're going to do this. Why? Because we value it, so we're going to do it. Okay, but you're adding to the deficit and the national debt. I don't care. We're going to do it. We could do it.
Yeah, actually, there's a sense in which he's making a decent point here. If you spin it enough to make it charitable, if you're excessively charitable, yeah, we need to cut spending too. If we're gonna cut taxes, we gotta cut spending too. I'm not a Reaganomics dumbass who thinks that, oh, we're gonna cut taxes and then we're gonna have more money for the government. Like, that's retarded. Like, that's obviously stupid. We need to cut spending too. So basically what he's saying is, oh, because we didn't cut spending, we need to raise taxes and keep spending where it's at. I'm saying, no, let's do that tax cut. Yeah, we can do that tax cut, but let's also decrease spending too, because government spending is not a good thing. Actually, when we increase the deficit, when we only decrease the taxes and keep spending where it's at, we're having more harm on the economy, because what happens there is the government has to borrow. The government has to borrow, which basically increases the demand for. Yeah, it basically increases the demand for borrowed money for in the lending market, basically, which raises these interest rates, and then it leads to crowding out, basically the crowding out effect, where businesses they're disincentivized from borrowing more money and investing back and borrowing more money to invest in their business due to the fact that these interest rates are so high, due to the fact that they'd have to pay so much back if they borrowed money. So yeah, there's a sense in which just lowering taxes without lowering spending is even worse, because you're decreasing investment. Although both are very bad. Both are very, very bad, because you're actually decreasing investment with both, because you're taking money from the producers who are going to invest if you have high taxes. So either way, you're decreasing investment. Either way, you're destroying the economy. So let's just cut taxes, cut spending, and place the government in the role it belongs. Eliminating force from society.
What do you mean? How could you do it? You're not even paying for it. We control our currency. We could do whatever the hell we want. If we want to increase the deficit, we have every ability.
We can, but should we? Should we destroy our economy? I mean, we can crash the economy if we want. We can completely ruin everyone's lives and crash our fucking economy if we want to. I mean, yeah, we can. Should we? Probably not.
Ability to do that. We do. And it's not like those people didn't get the tax cuts because you're adding to the deficit in the process. No, it still had the impact. So, same theory applied. You could just give everybody health care. You could just do Medicare for all, and you don't have to pay for it. Now, we could have a debate as to whether or not you should. And, usually when the economy is roaring and doing well, you want to have confiscatory policy, so you're basically saving for a rainy day.
I mean, this is just pure Keynesian BS, but...
So, you're taking in more money than you're spending out, but when the economy hits a rough patch, you're supposed to do the opposite. You're supposed to spend more. You're supposed to do deficit spending. Spend your way out of the crisis. So...
Who are you here? Who is he saying, oh, you're supposed to do this? The government? We're supposed to do this? No, let individuals decide. Let individuals decide how they want to spend their money and live their life. We don't need to be these central planners who tell people how they should live their lives and tell the economy how it should be structured. No, let people decide how they want their economy to be structured. It's just democracy, but for the economy. You guys love democracy, don't you? Well, then let's have a democratic economy. Let the people decide. Let the people decide how they want the economy to be structured rather than high-level bureaucrats.
So we can have a debate as to whether or not it's reasonable to pay for it, but...
Oh, let me be clear. I was not saying that democracy in general is a good thing. I'm just using their logic to, like, they're so obsessed with democracy and mob rule and all that bullshit. So, like, oh, if you guys really like democracy, yeah, I think you guys got it. But just to avoid the comments that are like, wait, you support democracy now? Don't you know that democracy is the same as two sheep and a wolf, or two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner?
The idea that you have to pay for it is just fundamentally untrue when you control your own currency. Again, you always have to worry about inflation, and you have to be cognizant of that. But broadly speaking, you control your own currency, you can do what you want. So if we...
No principles, just balancing the numbers, just balancing the statistics. I mean, this is pure pragmatism. We don't act based on pragmatism. That's not how humans live. Humans have to base their actions on principles, on generalized principles. If we want to act long range, we can work on twisting all these short-term little knobs like the Keynesians want to do, and destroy our economy in the long run. Or we can focus on actually producing long-run values. Humans live in the long term. We're not animals. We don't live based off the percepts and responses to these percepts. We live in the long range. We have to act long range. Our life is long. We have long lives. We can't just be these sort of range of the moment animals that just act based off of instinct and percept.
Wanted to pay for Medicare for all, if we wanted to do free college, could easily do it. And by the way,
one more thing about this Kyle Kulinski, he just has this list of things. When he talks about, what are your principles, he just lists a bunch of policies. Like, he doesn't actually base anything off principles. He's just a pragmatist. That's fundamentally what he is. He's just a pragmatist. Just a utilitarian pragmatist. Where you base what is good based off what is going to serve the collective benefit for the collective happiness of the collective. I mean, yeah.
Wait, we're talking about peanuts, at least in the case of free college. It's like $60 billion or $80 billion. That's nothing. They just casually passed a $4.5 trillion bailout. You couldn't do free college? Of course they could. You can't wipe the debt
I'm not a fan of the bailout.
slate clean? $1 trillion to wipe the debt slate clean.
I'm not a fan of the bailout because if you're a business, you have individual responsibility to make your business succeed or fail. And if you fail, you can't expect the government to bail you out. You have to deal with the consequences of your actions in reality. The government's not going to say that. The government can't subvert reality and say, "Oh, you acted in not accordance with reality. Well, I guess we'll wage a war on reality and keep you afloat." No, reality is God, my friend. Reality is my higher power. Objective reality is God.
1.5 to wipe the debt slate clean for student loans. They can do that. They choose not to do that. So this is my point, guys. Do not let them gaslight you, because they will do that. And they will keep asking anytime it's something that helps regular people, hey, you pay for it. Come on, bro, you gotta pay for it.
Oh yeah, that's that cringe conservative argument where it's like, oh, we're not going to base it on principles. We're just going to say pragmatism, pure pragmatism. We're going to respond to pragmatism with pragmatism. And it never works. They have morality on their side. They have altruism on their side. What we need is a new, revolutionary ethical system that can change the landscape and switch it from altruism to an egoistic system, so that we can avoid all of this bullshit. We got to avoid all the altruistic bullshit and search for happiness. I mean, we don't need to muddy the waters of our pursuit of happiness by stop muddying the waters with your ethical systems. Pursue your own happiness. Pursue your own life. You want to do it. You implicitly want to do it. You should. Don't stop muddying the waters. Just be happy. Just pursue happiness. Good Lord.
They'll always throw it out there. But they're gaslighting you. Because clearly, as you could see, everybody agrees. Left, right, and center in a time of crisis.
Everybody does agree, and that's the problem. The problem is we all agree fundamentally. We all fundamentally agree on altruism.
Do it. We just do what we have to do. That's it. We just do it. Well, to me, stopping 45,000 to 68,000 people dying because they don't have health care every year, that's a crisis. And you know how we should stop that? We should just do it.
Oh. Yes, President Trump wants you to text Trump to 88022. Good Lord. Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what every Kyle Kulinski video is basically. He points to something, he points to some clip and says, "Oh, this shows why we need Medicare for all, free college, a living wage, a Green New Deal." Like, he just has his list of things. I've seen enough Kyle Kulinski to know the pattern of these videos. I actually didn't watch this video before making this commentary, but I'm glad I did. I'm glad I made this commentary because there's like this. It so clearly demonstrates that everybody agrees. Everybody agrees on altruism. Everybody agrees on pragmatism. It's just that those are the wrong moralities. That's the wrong way to look at these systems ethically. We have the wrong ethical system right now, fundamentally. And that's the problem. That's the problem with the world right now. If you want to solve homelessness, if you want to solve medical bankruptcies, let's first switch our focus from altruism to egoism. And then we'll go to capitalism. And then you'll see very quickly that these problems will go away. And it's not because they're going to die. It's because these people are going to get out of poverty. I mean, there's going to be people that die, but there's always going to be people that die. It's in this case, the people that die are going to be the people that are the wife-beating drunks, the people that don't do what is necessary for them to survive in reality. When right now it's just basically whim. It's just whatever happens. It's just, if you die, it's based entirely on luck. That's how the current system's structured. And yeah, there's going to be a lot less unjust death in a free society, in Atlantis. Kyle Kulinski is pointing to ways to mess with the current system, to solve all these problems that are created by the system, that are created by the principles that he follows. He's pointing to that system, just more of the same, ultimately. I mean, he seems like a revolutionary, but he's really just pointing to more of the same. He's pointing to more of the same ways of thinking about these things. And what am I pointing you towards? I'm pointing you towards Atlantis. I'm pointing you towards a rational society where we can prosper and achieve unforeseen wealth. So follow me to Atlantis, my friends, and there we will achieve real happiness. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Peace.